And so there's a lot of different criteria when it comes time to the needs analysis that gets done as the first step in a lot of these issues. Whether you're talking about sustainment needs of existing assets, growth of the network related to load growth, NWAs, or even how distribution needs will drive certain requests of transmission. There's also the resiliency impacts, grid mod considerations, and also decarb goals that are happening and becoming more and more prevalent. And all this leads to a very complicated picture of being able to do the assessment of both not only the technical needs, but also how are we actually making these decisions when it comes to a holistic picture of value, benefits, and everything else. And it also leads to the question of how do we actually go about doing this evaluation? How are we doing the trade-off analysis? How are we thinking about the different problems and the different questions that we need to answer? And that's where the more capital allocation side of things comes into view. And we need a better solution to be able to pull these two things closer together to make that process more efficient of bundling that technical analysis or tying it more closely to how the actual planning decisions are made when it comes to grid level investments. And that's where our concept of integrated planning and the solutions that are needed to be brought forth and how the coupling happens is what we'll get into in the two use cases. But generally speaking, what we're talking about is tying the process of needs identification and technical analysis to the capital planning process. And really the core of this is getting multiple different alternatives for a given project or a given need to address it into the planning process. And in certain cases, this can be quite labor intensive, and making the process easier by more closely tying and integrating these tool sets can generate quite a bit of benefit in terms of that particular process. And some of the problems that we are avoiding or dealing with when it comes to actually connecting these are making regulatory compliance discussions more easy. We're identifying and being able to mitigate multiple different needs by having all these different alternatives and having visibility and line of sight end to end across the planning process and the technical analysis. It also prevents viable options from a technical perspective being eliminated upstream, where because you haven't yet gone through the capital planning process, you haven't looked at the holistic economic benefits that may come of it, even though we have already done the technical bits. So there's parts of this process that if you don't go through it end to end or don't have a more efficient way of doing it end to end, you end up potentially missing out on highly viable, beneficial projects that got eliminated early in the process because of certain technical considerations. And all this ends up leading to a suboptimal portfolio of potential projects and investments that you're making in the grid.